Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von hinten an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. Today I'm joined by Brian and Pedro, and we're going to be talking about the Barcelona game and then Borussia Dortmund's triumphant win over Gladbach as we won 3-2 this past weekend. But first off, Pedro, back in Brazil, how's life?
It's doing pretty good. I'm in the countryside right now, just enjoy some time, Easter time with my family. We had a great lunch today. And yeah, just glad to be back in the pod. It's been a while, I think, since I joined you guys.
It's good to have you back, bro.
Pedro is rocking a Camp Collar shirt for our audio-only listeners. Brian, how was your weekend?
It was good, just about the same as Pedro, just spending time with the fam for Easter and stuff. What about you? How's yours?
My Easter was Jewish, so not a lot of family involved, not a lot of festivities. I had a very nice, quiet Sunday. My girlfriend at one point was like, is it okay if we just like watch soccer and don't leave the house? And I was like, absolutely. I had to self-censor myself. I almost dropped the F word there. But let's get straight into the Barcelona game, because Dortmund beat the best team in Europe, but was not quite enough to advance into the next stage of the Champions League. What did you guys kind of make of that?
Want to go first, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, it is a little disappointing not to get to the next round of the Champions League, but at the same time, after losing 4-0 in the first leg, you know, the hopes weren't necessarily high that we would make it in the first place. So I do think that, you know, them putting in the showing that they did, it was very respectable, and it's the response that we wanted from them. I think a lot of people just really wanted them to show up more in this game, especially considering it was a home game, and that's exactly what they did. I think we were on course to get an even better result until the own goal, and I don't really blame Benzabaini for that necessarily, because he had Lewandowski to the left of him that would have gotten that ball if he didn't. But yeah, I mean, like, you can't really be mad. Like you said, we beat the team that's currently the best in Europe, best in form in terms of their results and their performances. So that's something to be proud of. And it wasn't necessarily just like, because like some people I feel like online were saying that, well, Barcelona already felt like they were through and they weren't really trying. I don't think that's the case. I think they were very much trying. And I think, especially after the first two goals, we did have them pinned back. And they were shaking a little bit. So I do think that it was a result to very much be proud of.
Yeah, like they didn't start Pedro, but at the end of the day, like the type of dominance we saw from Borussia Dortmund is still very, very promising. It's incredible. It goes to show you that, like, while there are very real issues with this squad, it still has so much quality, so much talent. Because if you look at like 3.81 on XG to 0.49, the math would tell you the most common outcomes for this game would be 4-0 and 4-1. And like that gives you like almost a coin, not a coin flip. Like it's a lot less than a coin flip, but it gives you a chance to progress, which after that first leg, no one would have really seen that coming. Like this could have very easily gone to extra time, and then it could have been anyone's game if you're playing 30 minutes in front of the yellow wall for that. Obviously, like, we didn't get the bounces, and like I would give Benzabaini a little bit more blame for the own goal, but like honestly, like this type of result, it's like it's a good moral victory. I hope that no one spent too much time to get injured and like deprive themselves or hurt us down the stretch for these last 4 games, but it's a nice moral victory, and we can just take it going forward for what it is.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you guys. I felt like it was a really motivational performance overall. Like, I think the guys had a great fighting spirit, which I thought was great because when you lost the first leg 4-0, I mean, it's really hard to get the energy to go back and believe that you can actually come back from that. And at some point, I honestly thought we were going to pull it off a Roma or a Liverpool because, I mean, we were in the environment for that, right? We scored in the beginning of each half. We were playing great. The press was really good. We played mostly a 2-3 press, with Jan going really high as well, and Barcelona, is struggling a lot in the single pivot. I believe it was De Jong, the single pivot during that match. But yeah, I think we played really well in all phases, especially in the first half. And I really thought we could have a better advantage at halftime. Unfortunately, that didn't materialize. But I mean, scoring, I think, was the 54th minute when we scored the second one. So I really thought we were going for the comeback, but at some point, Barcelona, when they got some time with the ball, I was really feeling bad for Pascal Gross, and I even have a small dilemma with one of Eli's friends over his gradings on my player ratings. I put his gratings down because he failed to track Fermin Lopez at that play, which eventually just killed us because we needed to just climb the mountain all over again. Shout out to that guy. I think it's Jared, his name.
Yeah. You can tell him how you really feel, Pedro. You can tell him to piss off if that's what you want. Like, it's okay.
That mistake really killed us. But yeah, I mean, tactically, I think we're pretty well. I think it was one of the best performances I've seen of Dortmund, tactically speaking, with Kovac. And I think that really paved the path for the rest of the season. I mean, we have only a few matches, and we could see a little bit of that already against Gladbach. Of course, we're going to talk more in depth later, but it was really, as I said in the beginning, motivational. It was great to see that fighting spirit, and hopefully that can be translated in the rest of the few matches, because we're going to need that if you're going to reach European competitions.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because I don't think he's going to merit a star or a dud of the week, but this is a player I do really want to talk about on this episode, is a guy who hasn't really played in a long time, returned to the starting 11, and I think both of these matches, and that's Niklas Süle. He said after this, I haven't played many games for Borussia Dortmund in which we stood up for each other and fought so hard. From the first minute, everyone in the stadium noticed that we believed in it. As a team, all 11 on the pitch, on the bench. The question is why we don't do the same in the Bundesliga. The question has been posed for a few years now. I can't answer it. The unbridled will, the way we put Barca under pressure, forcing them to play long balls. We have to accept the accusation. Like, this again, for me, like, this is a guy who I think has been criticized unfairly, because he's almost criticized more when he's not playing. And to me, like, every quote we hear from this guy is genuinely perfect. And we, as podcasters, like, really analyze these quotes. And everything I hear from Niklas Süle embodies the mentality I would want my captain to have. We don't need to go too much beyond that, but...
No, but I think you're right. I think, you know, in what he says here, he very much encapsulates, you know, what we want to see in terms of this team moving forward. And he says it right here, you know, in terms of where he states that he hasn't played that many games where in Dortmund where they've stood up for each other the way they did in that game. And I feel like if they were to do that in every game, or in most games throughout the season, because I mean, you do have slumps in form and stuff like that. I think this season as a whole looks a little bit different just from that perspective. But yeah, I think you're 100% right in saying that this is what you want to hear from your players, especially after a result like this. It's like, yeah, like, you want them to stand up for each other, and you want that to become the norm. And yeah, I very much respect him for coming out and saying all that.
No, yeah, I think Niklas Süle, I think he, as Eli said, he has been really unfairly criticized, in my opinion. I mean, I think we all had a different expectation with him this season, because in preseason we see him getting all fitness, we saw the photos, and we saw the quotes from the training staff saying he has been doing great in the preseason, so we had a different expectation for him, maybe even fighting for a spot in their starting 11, since we just signed out Valdemar Anton, so he maybe will be fighting for a spot, but due to injuries and some unfair criticism, of course, he hasn't played perfect all season. We all remember the Bochum game away. That was really embarrassing. Unfortunately, but I always remember the match against Stuttgart, the 5-1 match it was right in the beginning of the season. I remember that match, even though we got battered by Stuttgart. I remember clearly Sule being one of our best ball-playing center backs, and he doing really difficult passes I think it's still in the first half. I think he was subbed at some point in the second half. That really impressed me and reminded me of how good of a center back he can be when he's fully fit and confident. And you can see by this interview he's a really self-conscious and self-aware guy, and could be a really good leader for this team if he was on the pitch, if the injuries wouldn't and his physical issues, of course, wouldn't interfere with his Dortmund career. And I was actually watching that match I forgot the platform, but the guy who was commenting was Rafinha, the former Bayern Munich right back. And he was telling about his experience with Sula when they were playing together in Munich. And he remembered mentioning, he said, Sula is a great guy, great player, one of the best I've seen in Bayern Munich. And he has that hunger for titles, and he has the ability to play in a really high level. He just said the problem with him was the physical aspect, and I think mainly with the beginning of his career in Dortmund and probably the end of his career in Munich. Then that's how he got devalued and eventually left Bayern. But I think it's great to see Sula in that kind of form again, and giving the hopes and approaching the last year of his deal, that he can maybe give something more to Dortmund and to prove himself, that he can be worthy of an extension. I even put him on my list of the players that Dortmund should ship if they're serious about contending, but I'm glad to be proved wrong, and hopefully he can be that guy for us.
I think he has the possibility to be. And I think we also have to keep in mind, once again, everyone has underperformed, especially this season. I know he's had criticism over other seasons that he's been with us as well, but this season there's been so much just tumult, and it's just been such a tumultuous season for Dortmund as a whole, especially for a player like him coming in and not playing as much as he did previously, and then now coming off of injury. That's also not going to be easy. And I think now under Kovac there's some stability, and that's why we are seeing the best of him again.
Yeah, and he's still playing out of position, which is another thing I think we should talk about for a player who's being criticized. He's spent a lot of time at right back. He's been shifted out of his position for a guy who's not necessarily performed to the highest level we've seen a Nicolas Sula play at Borussia Dortmund. We've seen him get moved out of position for that guy, and he's performed admirably as a right back. And for all these talks about his fitness, I think it's a little bit of an old school mentality where you have to look a certain way and you have to be built a certain way, because before this season, he hasn't really had any problems with injuries. And even this season, it's a very minor injury, but some other injuries to center backs created a bit of an emergency, and then they bring him back a little too early, and in that first match back, he goes down with another injury. So I think that's really down to the coach forcing him back in because he was feeling a little bit of pressure on Nuri Sahin specifically. I think he needs to take fault for Nicolas Sula more than Nicolas Sula, because Nicolas Sula was just doing what was asked of him when he probably knew, and the medical staff I'm sure was telling Nuri Sahin just know, there is a high risk here. And it was very clear, we said it on the podcast, what are you doing? The same thing happened with Anton. So absolutely no fault of Nicolas Sula to have an injury problem for the first time this season because of that. But let's get into the performance against Gladbach. 1.49 to 1.36 on XG. So one of the closer games on XG. But did you guys think this game was as close as it looks on paper?
I think that in terms of this game, because I did watch it in two parts. I watched part of the second half earlier in the day when it was actually live, and then I came back to the first half a little later just to obviously see what happened, because I saw that we did have Itakura somehow get through on goal and all of that. But I will say, it really, I really don't think it was as close as it was. I think, granted, the Itakura goal was something that was completely avoidable, and I think that in itself shifted, the momentum a little bit in Gladbach's favor. But prior to that, I think we were coming out guns blazing, and I think it was very much a very strong performance. And especially with the penalty like the way that it was called and everything. I mean, a bit soft in my opinion. I don't know. Like I usually wouldn't expect that to be the call that was made, but I mean it is what it is. And I think the reaction after that too, even like when that lead was truncated to just one goal, I think we did a very good job of seeing the game out. I don't think Gladbach, aside from that, caused too much issues. And I think our center backs, we mentioned Sula and talk a little bit more about that later. But like even he was, going in and making some very good tackles in that game and stopping Gladbach in their tracks. So I feel like they weren't necessarily the most the most threatening side against us, and I think that with all the chances we created, we could have even scored more, obviously. And I think we did a very good job in stunning them at the end of the first half in terms of all those goals, just like a complete flurry that probably took them out. So yeah, I mean the penalty gave them a little bit more life. That first Itakura goal kind of shifted momentum a little bit, but I think we did quite well. I don't think it was necessarily as close as the scoreline might suggest.
Yeah, no, I think I had a different perspective of the match because I watched the full first half and then I watched a little bit of the second half, but from what I seen, we didn't have many chances from either side after the penalty. But I thought, as Eli asked, like I didn't think the scoreboard really reflect what the game was, especially in the first half, because I think Dortmund was really in control. I saw Gladbach's mid-blocks really sluggish, and I saw, especially on the left side with Odic, I thought he was very beatable. Like we had really good chances and really good runs from Couto, from Gross on that side. So I thought in my head, okay, we're going to score in no time. Like it's just a matter of just sticking to the game plan, playing as good as we were playing at that point, and then we're going to eventually score a goal. And then, yeah, the whole Itakura situation materialized. I thought it was quite funny because we had a discussion that on the group chat in the week, Eli said, I think something about Itakura not passing forward, but then he passed forward, and then Ben Sebaini gave a great assist to the Japanese to open the scoreboard.
But see, like that's the issue is he played it to our player, like this is a guy with under 3 progressive passes a game, like that.
They did play together a little bit.
I just thought it was funny. As soon as he scored that goal, I was like, oh my god. I'm not sure if I should be pissed or I should laugh because of what Eli said in the midweek, but yeah, but it was unfortunate. Even Ben Sebaini, I think he didn't even understood what happened at that point, honestly. It was really lucky goal, in my opinion, for Gladbach. And after that, I think we felt it a little bit. But I was glad that the boys were maintaining the game plan and were really exploring Urich's side, because it was really... I think that was the way we would score a first goal. It didn't happen with Pascal Gross still get us hit. But yeah, I thought the game plan was pretty similar to Barcelona's. I mean, we're playing in a back four with Sula as a right back, out of possession, and I think that really helps young Couto just use the best of his abilities as a right wing back on the right side, and at the same time allows Vincent to go either from the inside or the outside in his position, also helping in the build-up in a back four, and Felix Mecha as a single pivot. And I really like this formation. I really like the way Dortmund's game is flowing with that formation. I think it suits way better the squad we have nowadays. Even so, we don't have as much depth in the center-back position, but I think we can solve that after the season is over, and I think we could maintain this game plan. I really like that with Sahin, even though he didn't made we perform the way we're performing now. But yeah, I think overall, like, the result doesn't reflect it much, because I think Dortmund was obviously the better team. I thought Gladbach's defense was really not very threatening. I was really more worried about their attacking threats, and of course, Kleindienst won the penalty, and then Stoger just screamed at the yellow wall, which I mean, you gotta say the guy was brave to do that in front of a yellow wall. Like, you gotta give him that, but that made me mad, and then I don't more excited for us to win this match. And then I think we were way better in this match, and hopefully if we keep playing like that in that form and getting luckier, not conceding stupid goals, I think we could be on a good way to maybe an Europa League.
I'm not giving Stoger any credit for the bravery down 3-2 to try and like rile up the yellow wall moron.
Yeah,
Brian.
I hate it, but yeah, I mean, you gotta say the guy has balls. Like I would never do that if I was playing against Dortmund at Signal Iduna Park.
However, I may admit a little bit of bias with the Dortmund crest on my chest, but Brian, do you want to talk about some of the counter pressing we saw from Borussia Dortmund throughout this match? Because to me, like, that was kind of the difference. Like, Pedro, you talked about the similarities in the formation, and like, I agree with the ball. It was very similar to the game plan against Barcelona, but against the ball, the counter pressing was much more aggressive, a lot easier to press like a team whose best like player with the ball is Rocco Wrights compared to like, I don't know, Frankie de Jong, Gavi, like Kubarsi.
Right, yeah, and I mean, kind of going back to that Barcelona game, I think that was kind of, as we kind of talked about, the inspiration for what happened here, but kind of what you said, a bit more aggressive. But I also think that comes from the confidence that came from that Barcelona result. I think everyone realizes that every single game now is kind of like a cup final, and that you need to do what you need to do at this point to get into that European position. But if we're talking specifically about the counter-pressing, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in our chat too, especially in the first half with Carney Chukwuemeka coming on. I mean, he was a big catalyst for all of that too, winning the ball in possession and then turning it into something. I think for all 3 goals, he had a pretty big hand to play in it. So I think he did a good job in that position, being able to turn, like, once that he got that ball, to put it in the right position for all the rest of our players to be able to take advantage of. So I think he was a big part of that, and I do think that, yeah, it was very much more aggressive, but kind of like what you said, it comes down to who you're playing in the midfield. But on top of that, if you're coming off a win like against like a team like Barcelona, you're going to feel like you're on top of the world as well, and that confidence is going to come out in your play. So it could come off as more aggressive or more decisive in a situation like that. So yeah, totally.
I mean, Julian Brand even won a ball like right on the 18, went in, and like was not the only one, to be very clear, who made a bad decision from a dangerous position. Like even Chukwuemeka, at one point, like wins the ball back, drives to the byline, has like the opportunity to play a ball, and instead like weirdly tried to recycle possession. So I think like we almost had the same amount of opportunities to create chances as we did against Barcelona, just a lot less of them came off. And like sometimes I think that happens. Like if you flipped like some of these, like this result and the Barcelona result, in terms of like the XG, like I would not be surprised. Like these games look fairly like similar in terms of like the opportunities we had. It's just like against Barcelona, maybe Sergio Guirassy is able to bully Kubarsi, or I'm forgetting his name. I'm seeing the face, the frosted tips, the big center back. Anyway, the Uruguayan. Arojo. Thank you. I was getting very into my description there. But regardless, like maybe against the senior Gladbach center backs who are a lot older, a lot worse on the ball, if we're talking about passing forward. But like that they are physical, and maybe he wasn't able to bully them. Maybe like their winger was able, the 6'4", I can't pronounce his name, so this is what Brian's here for. I'm gonna try this. Kvenchar, Thomas Kvenchar for Gladbach, the 6'4" striker / winger they played, and he was doubling up on Karim Adeyemi.
Like the guy from Czech Republic, right?
Yeah. Former Sparta Prague player, I believe.
Yeah, I think
that they signed.
Chevanchera. That's how you pronounce it, Chevanchera.
Okay. Ventura. Like he was doubling up on Adeyemi in a way that like Rafinha or Lamine Yamal just would never be asked to. So like maybe that creates some of the issues we had in terms of creating big chances, because Karim Adeyemi is a guy who doesn't necessarily create a ton of chances, but when he does, they're very, very big chances. and that's why he's been like statistically one of our best creative, probably our best creative player by expected assisted goals per 90. So like I think that's something we also like missed out on in this, but I think overall you guys are right. Like this was a close game on paper, but like it always felt like Dortmund were dominant because the best chance Gladbach created outside of the penalty and the goal was worth 0.02 xg, and they had just 4 shots excluding the 2 goals. But let's move straight into a quote from Daniel Svensson about his performance, his first goal. I felt very comfortable in Dortmund since day one, on and off the pitch. I hope that you can see that. Of course, it's a step up from my previous club in Denmark. The Bundesliga and Champions League are a different level, but I've adapted well. And I'm going to give it to Brian because I think he's a little bit of a fanboy. I don't know.
You're completely right. I've been a fan of Svensson since day one. The more I learned about the player even prior to his transfer, the more I was like, yeah, like this guy fits. Like this guy is going to be good. And I'm so glad to be proven it right in my assumption in that case, because he's been such an asset to us. Tenacious as ever, constantly running, creative, scored his first goal in this game. I think he's just been a really refreshing addition to this squad. He's one of those players, kind of like, obviously I think in the long term he's going to be more talented than Ryerson. He's still 22, still developing and all of that.
He's actually turned 23, Brian.
23, excuse me. So maybe I'm not as much of a fanboy as I thought.
Didn't even know you had a birthday.
But yeah, obviously higher ceiling than that. But you see a lot of those similarities there. He's very tenacious. He's a willing runner. And he's very good with the ball. He can invert. He can play in that central midfield position. He's put in some quite a few good corners, quite a few good crosses, in his time. So he showed he's very versatile, and just for the value for what we're getting, I think he's a fantastic player. And I think him saying that he's adapted well is an understatement. I think it fits like a glove, basically. So very happy to have him.
Yeah, no, I love Daniel Svensson. I think he has been a great addition since he came to the club, and I mean, it's just amazing how good he has been in all accounts, like defensively, offensively, on the ball, off the ball. He has been really well-rounded player, and that's a guy really similar to, as we said, Ryerson profile, but I think he's even better on the ball, and he has an even better delivery on corners and that kind of thing. So I really like how he has been adapting, and just he just fits like a glove in this formation and how we were playing. That I just figured, I mean, if Nico Schlotterbeck, of course, he would play in the back three. It would have been Sabaini starting instead of Svensson. I don't think so. I think Svensson would be the starter. And I really like the way how those two young wing backs, like Svensson and Couto, are developing since we changed the formation and we are using them more in a wing back kind of role. And I really like Svensson he's being brilliant in all accounts, and I like Couto getting more confidence and being used as a right wing back in the formation he was used in Girona, and where he really shined in Spain. Hopefully he can emulate the same pattern, because we already saw what he could do with the delivery for the Felix Nemecha goal. Even though I know the assist was counted to Adeyemi, but I mean, that touch was so subtle. It was not like Adeyemi did that on purpose, like it was an accident assist. But I still really like that delivery from Couto, and I'm glad those two are working really well together. I'm curious to see if Ryerson is also coming back to the team, if Couto is sticking to that position, but I'm glad that we're just rotating those two in those different roles, and we are playing like different formations, different tactics, and I was really glad. Even we were talking about earlier, the counter press against Gladbach was a little bit different than Barca's. We were playing a 2-3 press against Barca. We seated most in a low mid block, 5-4-1 in the first half, and then we got more confidence and we were just starting to press more. But against Gladbach, we were even more aggressive, playing in a 2-4. I even seen Couto just go forward and really help press Odic on that right, the left side of Gladbach's defense. So I'm really glad they're giving that flexibility for us to play different formations and to spread the pitch a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Brian already talked about his pick for start of the week, so I'll let him just formally announce it to you all. Brian, who's your star of the week?
I think you're going to be surprised because you said I wouldn't pick him initially. I was actually going to go with Niklas Süle for this one, just because I think his performances have been exemplary. I mean, kind of like what I already talked about earlier. The tackles that he made against I think it was Rafinha, who was in the box in the Barcelona game, where he just comes in and absolutely just dispossesses him. I mean, he motored to get there. That was fantastic. That was peak Niklas Süle. The player that we have expected to see, over all these years that he's been with the club at this point. And it's really good to see him having this sort of renaissance. I do hope it is a renaissance. I say that with a grain of salt. Obviously, we want to see this continue. But, I mean, we did see it continue a little bit into the Gladbach game. Also, the tackle to deny Playa his opportunity in the box. I mean, the guy basically put his head right where Playa's boot was. Like, that's commitment, and I respect that so much. And then on top of that, in the second half, I don't remember what player it was on, but on the touchline, he came in and absolutely clattered. It was a clean tackle, but absolutely laid the Gladbach player out, and that started another counter chance. So I think we're seeing the player that, we've wanted to see. I just do hope that this is like a consistent change now, that he can stay fit and actually contribute at that level, because we know he can. This isn't the first time we've seen him do well. He's been kind of like a bunch of players at the club right now that's kind of just been up and down, and right now he's on the up, so I do believe that he deserves to get his flowers. But yes, Svensson is a good pick as well, and I would have gone with him if it had not been for Niklas Süle and his admirable performances this week.
Well, he's still on the board for Pedro, but there are a couple other options you could go with.
No, I'm gonna be boring. Like my only two options here were Süle and Svensson, so I'm gonna stick with the young Swede, man. I think Svensson has been really good, as I said, really good all around, and even in corners, and his delivery has been really impressive in that sense. So for me, it's gonna be short and simple. I'm gonna stick with Svensson as my star of the week.
And before Eli gives his, I do want to shout out our listeners, because they did give theirs as well online when we did pose a question on Instagram, and they did choose both Svensson and Chukwuemeka as theirs. So shout out to you guys for participating in that.
Well, that was just from the weekend game, so I'm going to have to take the most obvious candidate when we talk about both games. There's a guy with 4 goals between the Gladbach game and the Barcelona game. Over both ties, Guirassy was actually more likely to score 4 than 3. That's incredible. That's a fantastic player right there. And I've said, like, we have to extract, like, surplus value from Serhou Guirassy in the first 2 years of his contract to really make sure that we get what we paid for. And so far this season, if he keeps it up over the next couple of years, like, that'll match the value. I think he could really improve at times. I think that his finishing is a lot less consistent than the previous season, where everything he hit kind of went in, and his stats are also down. And I'm gonna just, I've been a little critical in recent weeks, so I'm gonna say that maybe a lot of that's just Nuri Shocking Ball taking it out of him, and now that we see a team that's a little bit more free flowing, which under Niko Kovac, a lot of people by reputation would not think, but compared to Shaheen, anything is. We've seen the best of Guirassy come out, and this week again, like, his movement in the box, he misses the chance set up by Karim Adeyemi, which is huge, and you're like, this might be a long night against Barcelona, but he comes back and is relentless in that game and continues to find big chances. And then at the weekend, he's there on has a couple chances off cutbacks. There's one time where he's like on the edge of the 6-yard box and he's begging for the ball. And I think it was Chukwuemeka did not find him and played a different ball that got cut out. But overall, I think like he had a great game, great 2 games, honestly. And there's no third choice after Svensson, Süle. Like, you have to give it to Guirassy. There's no one else. Like, he honestly was the best player this week. It's hard to go anywhere else. But
100% agreed.
We have to get negative now, and despite 2 wins, Brian, who is going to be your dud of the week?
I'll start with what our listeners said. They mentioned Kareem Adeyemi as well. But once again, it is their opinion, so I respect it. I get where the sentiment comes from. There was some blame on his shoulders for the Itakura goal, so I mean, it's a shout. Mine's gonna be harsh, I guess, because he didn't really play all that much. But Brandt, once again, I feel like for the most part felt and looked very lost in his short appearances, both against Gladbach and Barcelona. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say there. He still looked like he really wasn't fully on it. He didn't look on the same wavelength as his teammates, and I don't want to dump on him because we know he's not in the best of form right now, but he wasn't effective, and yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that his form can improve, going forward, and I think some time on the bench will help with that. So that's my dud.
30 minutes on the week, Brian. 30 minutes across
I said it was harsh.
games.
I said it was harsh, but I said what I said, so I stand on it. So,
Pedro, do you have a dud of the week for us?
Nah, yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, my audio's, Brian's audio was good for me for a second. Who was his dud? Like
Julian Brandt.
Julian Brandt. Oh yeah, that's harsh. Now that I hear, I was like, wow, okay, he was not even on the pitch that much. Okay, and he even scored against Barca, but he was unfortunately disallowed. My dud, I mean, I don't think it's that harsh. I mean, it was a good week for us, which is rare. So in that sense, it's hard to pick one dud. But for me, it's Remy Bensebaini, man. I think, of course, in the Barca game, he had the assist for Guirassí's second goal. But at the same time, I felt he was our worst defender in possession in that match particularly. And of course, we have this match against Gladbach where he gives an assist to Itakura to score the opener. So in that sense, it doesn't look good. It's not like he was terrible or anything like that. It's just like, from all the options we have, I think he's the most obvious pick for me as a dud, if I have to choose one. And of course, I think he recovered well in the second half against Gladbach, especially. I think he had like a really good recovery in a counter for Gladbach that could have been really dangerous. Yeah. So in that sense, I think he was really good, really decent, but a little bit below the rest if I have to compare the other players on the pitch. So I think for me, for now, it's going to be Remy Bensebaini, but I still like him. But as I said before, if Schlotterbeck was healthy, who was going to be benched? It's going to be Bensebaini. So I think that says enough about my opinion on the matter. So he's my dad.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious choice. I'm left with the most difficult one. Brian took a kind of cop-out answer to hit a guy while he's down who barely played. But I'm gonna have the difficult discussion. I think I'm gonna do it. This guy scored a goal in the Gladbach match, but I have to go with Mecha because I just think like against Barcelona, there's a couple giveaways, and in the Gladbach match, it's the same thing. Like he's just not a guy who you can fully trust in possession. And then, like, you can say the penalty's soft. You can say that most of the time it's not a penalty. But when you are second to the ball, it's a high boot position. Like, you're giving the referee a much easier chance to blow his whistle and make that decision, where if you just defend a little bit better, if you're a little bit braver, like maybe he jumps in with his head all of a sudden, like, yeah, he could be risking his life. Maybe that's not the best thing to ask, but like there's other ways to defend in which like you can go up even before the ball comes down there. Like you can get your shoulder on a guy and not concede a penalty. And in this case, he concedes a penalty in both these matches. There's just moments of sloppiness in possession. It's a problem he's had his entire career. If you look at his pass accuracy, he's moved into a better team. The pass accuracy's gone up a little, but it's still not good enough for Borussia Dortmund on the season. It's not good enough in these games, and that just kind of takes away from some of the chances. My dog is scratching her collar. Sorry for the noise, but his ability to control the ball in possession and dictate the tempo of these games is really hurt by some of these sloppy giveaways. And it's just not good enough to be a number 6 for Borussia Dortmund. In my opinion, the goal is very good. It's not a terrible performance. It's not a dud of the week in which we have a even slightly worse week. But in this case, we had a good week. And I just want to, we haven't talked about him, and I just want to give a little bit of criticism. Not a ton, just a little bit, because he was good, he was not great, and, over the balance, you do some dumb things like concede a penalty that takes you from, good, and it knocks you down a peg, so I just want to put that out there. I don't want to be too harsh, but...
That's a completely fair point, and one thing that really worried me about Barca was our midfield out of possession with Gross and Matcha tracking the Barca's midfield runs, and that happened, of course, in the goal with Gross not failing to cover that space left from Bensebaini, and then Fermin Lopez using that space to create the chance that eventually became the own goal for Rami. And also, I think not even him and Matcha together in that midfield worry me a little bit out of possession, and I think that's completely fair criticism from Eli. I think he was really omissive against Barcelona. He was way better against Gladbach, but still curious to see how that dynamic off ball is gonna work with those two as our midfield duo.
I think this game shows that they're definitely. I think we've harped on it. There needs to be some midfield reinforcement this summer. The one thing I will say is, I don't know exactly how many minutes he's had since he's come back from injury. I don't think it's been super substantial. So there is that too.
This is his 3rd or 4th start, I believe. He started Barcelona leg 1, Barcelona leg 2, so this is his 3rd start.
But what I'm trying to say is more so this is still a player once again that has been out for a substantial amount of time. So I think he's still obviously catching up to pace. Not everyone's going to be like Nicolas Sula in this situation where he's had these 2 games where he's done substantially well, and I think that speaks to Sula's character. But not every player is going to catch up to speed that quickly. So there is that to keep in mind as well. But yeah,
that's fair, and I will save my criticisms for his fitness record for a summer recap episode, because we have to get into our Hoffenheim preview. Dortmund have won 3 of their last 5 games in all competitions, drawing Bayern and only losing to Barcelona. Hoffenheim have lost 3, drawn 1 against Augsburg, and 1 against Mainz. This past weekend, they lost a 3-2 thriller with goals from Bülter and Kramaric in extra time of the first half before a 57th minute Lucas Poller goal kind of sealed the victory for Freiburg. But this is a team that's in the top 6 for salary, but they are in the bottom 6 for table performance, and they have already lost one of their top performers this season to Bayern Munich on a free, and he is suspended for this match. If you have him on your team in fantasy, please keep him there. It's Tom Bischoff, so that's a key component they're going to be missing in this game. But what can you guys kind of give us? What do you guys think is going to happen for this match?
Pedro, you can go first with this one.
I think for this match it's going to be a little difficult to deal with them defensively, but I think with the formation that we are going for right now, I think we have a way more solid base to work in possession with the back 3. So I think it's going to be, as usual, as we said, I think Dortmund didn't perform to win 3-2 against Gladbach. We play to win for a way more reasonable margin. But since it's Borussia Dortmund, you never know what you're going to get. So I think for me, if I have to go for a prediction, I would go with 3-1, and hopefully we're going to keep the whole 4 European competitions alive until the last minute.
Yeah, I agree with Pedro there. I think it's going to be a 3-1. I feel like you read my mind there, but that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be super easy because games against Hoffenheim aren't necessarily super easy when it comes to Dortmund usually, or at least in the last few years, I should say. But at the end of the day, I think, kind of like what we said earlier, every game is kind of a cup final for these guys now. Every game is important in that chase for European competition. And yeah, they don't have a choice but to win at this point. You know, not winning or drawing like that could almost be damning for the end of the season. And I think these guys are really up for it now. I think the confidence is there to get the result. Under Kovac, you know, we've had a lot more better away performances, obviously. So I think with the way we're playing right now, the fact that we have a system that's working, and on top of that, I do think Maxi Bayer's injury wasn't as bad as it as bad as we thought it might have been. So he might be in contention for that game as well. I think with him on the pitch, which I assume he would be if he would be fit to start, I think he's going to want to go there and score as well. So and he's been in quite good form. So I do think we have a very good chance to see a high scoring game. But once again, they do still have threats and attacks. So putting that one goal caveat in there, you know, it's a safe bet in my opinion. So yeah, 3-1.
Pedro, can you give me a score prediction?
Prediction, I already said, right? Was it 3-1 for us?
Okay, 3-1. And I am going to go with 2-1. I think it'll be a bit nervier than you guys. They're playing a lot of guys who play as forwards, a lot of big, tall guys. Be a little wary on some of these set pieces because Hoffenheim's like starting striker is 6'5". Kramaric is not a slouch in the air. He can also take a direct set piece. We have unfortunately seen that to good effect against Dortmund. But yeah, I think 2-1 is fair. I'll go Kramaric with a goal because he loves scoring against Dortmund. And then I'm going to go with Guirassy and Adeyemi scoring. I'm going to have Adeyemi assisted by Maxi Bayer. And I'm going to have Adeyemi setting up Guirassy for the winner. But let's move on to some other news. This is a little unfortunate. Sergio Guirassy has a release clause. Thoughts? Do we care? Is it going to be activated? What do you guys think about this?
So from what I've been seeing, and Pedro can confirm because I feel he's done a couple of pieces or written some content on this. It doesn't seem like it exists, but it's for a very select group of clubs, and on top of that, it seems like Guirassy is very comfortable and doesn't really want to leave. So I don't really think that's something we need to worry about. Keeping it short and sweet.
Yeah, no. Sergio Guirassy, I think I would stick with him, and I'm not really sure if they're gonna activate a release clause. There's been news today that I just posted on BBB Buzz that clause it's only valid for a few teams. If I remember them all, it's from Spain, it's Real Madrid and Barcelona. Don't really think neither of those teams is gonna spend that much money on backup striker. So I think those are discarded. And 5 from the Premier League, I'll see if I remember them all. It's City, United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Chelsea. So those are the teams who can activate Guirassy's release clause. And I think from all those teams, I think the ones that I probably fear the most are probably Chelsea and not Arsenal. No, sorry, yeah, it's Arsenal. I don't think Liverpool, even though I think they probably need a striker if they sell Darwin Núñez. I'm not really sure if Guirassy is the best fit for the system. They really like to play really straight vertical football. And sometimes Guirassy holds the ball a little bit too much for a team that likes to pass it fast and just transition really quickly forward. So I would say I would fear probably Chelsea and Arsenal if there would be 2 options from those that I just cited that could sign Guirassy. But I will stick with Guirassy. I think he has been really good with the team. Allegedly, according to news, he wants to stay with Borussia Dortmund, and Borussia Dortmund is really happy with his performances. But we never know. According to the news, it all depends on European competitions and if Dortmund is going to play Europe next season. So I think we're probably going to talk about more developments when we know if we're playing European competitions and which one are we playing.
I think the main thing that I've seen with Guirassy is also that he's just very happy that, Dortmund is tailoring their play to him. And I don't think and once again, I believe Patrick Berger also mentioned this in his tweets, and his and just overall in his covering of this story. There's not another team that's going to do that for Guirassy. So yes, if he goes to Chelsea, if he goes anywhere else, I don't think they're going to switch their system or play in a way that benefits him to be their main source of threat, the way that we do at Dortmund. And I do think that that is a factor in what he's thinking about, or what he would be thinking about in terms of whether it makes sense to move or not. I also feel like they've also been saying that he's very much enamored with how the Yellow Wall treats him and just the connection with the fans. And once again, that is a very unique quality of a club like Dortmund to have that. I do think that the fans and the players do have that intrinsic and special relationship here that they might not exactly have at some clubs. So I do think these are all kind of things that would work towards keeping him here with us.
Yeah, with his total package at Borussia Dortmund being 50 million euros, I think the only place he could really go would be willing to go, that would be interested, is Arsenal. But if he's really interested in Borussia Dortmund, 50 million euros it's enough to retire your family, your grandchildren's family, their grandchildren's family, their grandchildren's grandchildren's family. I don't know. I think that we're most likely to see him stay, but I do think that Arsenal is a good fit, but their scouting is now done a bit more by Arteta, so it's a little bit less imaginative, and he is not from the Basque Country. They've only been really linked with Basque Country players lately, to my knowledge, or at least for the most part. But let's move on to the next rumor. We have Dortmund thinking about extending Niklas Süle, but plan to offer much lower wages. The reported extension from Waz would be between 6 and 8 million euros. I would take this on the lower side of that. I think at 8, you can find some better value. Maybe a player who's not as good right now, but has some potential in the future, because Niklas Süle is getting up there in age. I think he has some more time in the game because he's not necessarily the most physically reliant player, but also if you're actually concerned about your weight, that is not something that gets better with age, because the more weight you carry, the more injury prone you can become, and that's something to keep in mind when you are older. Although I did say earlier that you should let him be whatever his normal typical playing weight is. I stand by that, but also with a player that wants to play and is more comfortable at that heavier playing weight, that is something to get mindful of as they get older, and that next contract you have to keep those wages down.
Yeah, I definitely think that if you can get those wages down, you do keep him. Obviously, it also depends on where exactly that is, how the length of the contract, and then of course what the options are in terms of who you can bring in, who's younger. If you can keep him for another 2 years, around that 6 to 7 million euros a year, and then bring in another player to mold in that time frame, I think that's a good plan, and I'd be very happy with that, because I still do want to see him have a consistent run next to Schlotterbeck. I think that would be the ideal for me, just to see him play the game that we know that he can play, and kind of write a better story with Dortmund. So.
Or if the extension takes effect next year, you can do some funny accounting where next year he gets paid less, but he gets an extra guaranteed year on his contract. So you give him a 1-year extension, but you reduce his annual wage to 8 million. Then I might be a bit more in support of it. Sorry, I just thought of some creative ways to do a deal.
A more backloaded kind of deal. Yeah, but I don't know, because with Niklas Süle, I mean, as we said before, we really like the player, and he's a great guy, speaking to the media. He seems to be a great leader, but at the same time, we need to take into account not only these past 2 matches that we watched from him and all his history at Borussia Dortmund. Was either not playing in the standard that he should be, or not being physically fitted enough to stay in the starting 11, and we've been to different managers through the past few years, and He usually has his amount of chances to play, but usually sometimes he eventually comes back to the bench with better options at our disposal. So in that sense, I think depending on the way the structure of the contract is going to be all set up, as Eli said, I think it could be worth it depending on the deal. Like maybe we can sign him to a two more year deal aside the extra year he has until the end of 2026 with lower salaries. But I mean, he's getting a little older with age, and we don't have the certainty that he's gonna be either fit to play or he's not gonna get injured. Of course, we don't have the certainty with many players. They all can get injured at any point, but Nicolas Sula is a little bit more of a risk that I might be willing to take it. I will probably wait until the end of the season to see if he continues this kind of performances, and maybe he can start in the beginning of the next year, and maybe we can start talking about a contract extension surrounding a little bit before the winter transfer window. But I'm not sure. For now, I'm not sure if I would take it.
I think, once again, no matter what you do with Sula, you're going to need to bring in at least another player. With signing him for that like 1 or 2 year extension, I do think that gives you a little bit of a grace period to just bring in one player that you really want to mold. Then on top of that, you can give like an academy player, some additional time as well. But either way, I think center back is definitely something that Dortmund, especially if we're planning on playing like this moving forward, that's really something that they're going to have to, look into as is. So either way, I think you bring in someone else, even if it's just like a long-term replacement. I think either way it's going to be important in that sense.
Yeah, like with my idea behind extending him is essentially like he is probably better than a lot of the guys out there who are willing to sit and be that reserve option. And we already have seen him at the club being the reserve option, hasn't kicked up a fuss, hasn't done anything bad. So that's where my head is at with this. If the financials work, then make it work. But let's move on. Borussia Dortmund have been linked with a young Argentine attacking midfielder Alvaro Montoro. Pedro, I think you've seen a bit more of him. I'm not sure what time Copa Libertadores is on, but I believe it is after my bedtime. So I haven't gotten a chance to really watch him, but I think you might have.
Actually, I did a profile on him on BB Buzz. It's there if you guys want to check it out on BB Buzz. More specifics about Alvaro Montoro. But to be completely fair with you, it's not that I watch him that much. I mean, I follow Argentine football, but not to a religious standard. And I really liked watching Vélez last season because they won the Argentinian the league last year. It didn't happen since I think it was 2012 was the last time they won. So a little more than 10 years they haven't won the national competition. Of course, it's usually more dominated like for bigger clubs like Boca Juniors and River Plate. Racing also has a pretty good team right now. But at the same time, he didn't play that much like last year. He was backup, and since they sold one of the best players last year, Aquino, to I think was Colo-Colo from Chile, he spent more time playing and developing his his game time. So he has more minutes. He has a few goals, and he's really good in carrying the ball forward. His dribbling ability is really good. So it's a proper 10 and more dribbling kind, and he is really good in different passing range from what I read and from what I could see from him and from YouTube shorts and those kind of videos. Of course, I don't have the full picture of him. I will probably start watching him more from now onward, and of course, if Dortmund really materialize that interest. But I think it's still, from what I saw and what I read, I think it's still a really raw talent. So I think we will need more time to develop himself. And even Justin Lerma, he hasn't been having much game time in Ecuador as well. So with those guys, you never know. I think it would give him a little more extra time to develop. He's starting most of the matches this 2025 season because the calendar year here in South America starts from January. So the beginning of the season, still a few matches in, but it's been promising, but it's still really raw. But let's just see if that interest really materializes and if we're really going to go after him. But it's an interesting profile. I just think he needs to get a few things better. He's only 5'5", so he's not that tall not really strong, so he probably need to get a little bit more physical if he comes to Europe, especially in the Bundesliga. And also his shooting from long range ability could be a little bit better, so I think he could develop the part of his football skills. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But I think that's an interesting profile to look after, and I think we're probably going to look more into those kind of profiles. We have Mohamed Damar from the second division, also being linked to Dortmund, also because we have two guys running out of contracts in 2026 in Gio Reyna and Julian Brandt. So I'm glad that for the profiles we're looking for, but I would like at least one profile with more certainty that would be that number 10 for Dortmund, as much as I like these kind of guys that are being linked to us.
Mohamed Damar is a bit of a different profile in that he is about 9 to 10 inches taller. Just for the viewer or listeners.
Oh, that's true. Physically speaking, yeah, he's a little bit different. But Lerma, it's not that physical as well. I mean, he's more compared to Montoro, but yeah, he still needs to grow a little more muscle.
And Brian, I'll ask you about Dortmund's reported interest in two Bundesliga center backs, both Robin Koch and Ko Itakura, who obviously scored against us this weekend. We've heard conflicting reports about both. This is not the first time Dortmund has reportedly been interested, but can you talk about how you feel about this?
I don't necessarily think either are starting candidates for Dortmund to look into. And once again, kind of like what we talked about with the Sula situation, I think if we're going to be bringing in another player for depth, we should be bringing in a player with an eye for the future. Robin Koch isn't really, the player that I would think fits that. I believe he's actually 28 as well, so you're just upping the age of the team there.
Same age as Anton.
And I believe Itakura as well as 28, 29, so it's kind of in the same ballpark. Itakura, I mean, we kind of already mentioned, not the most progressive player, solid defensively, I would say, overall, but once again, I think it makes more sense to bring in a player that has an eye for the future and it has a more long-standing place in the team where he could partner Schlotterbeck or anyone else in that center part of defense. But the other thing is, with Frankfurt, there's a million other players that I think they should be looking at that aren't named Robin Koch. So, yeah. If you're looking at Frankfurt, look at the other profiles they have there because, they have a bunch.
Yeah, I don't want to sign arguably like their second or third best defender. I'd rather sign Teat. Tuta has a little bit of ability, but I don't really like any of the three. Say that again?
I said Hugo Larsson for a midfield. I know that would be expensive, but I mean I've been talking about that for years at this point. I think he'd fit great. So.
Yeah, I think he's more interesting, but I think with the price tag, I'd rather go elsewhere. And just signing another 28-year-old defender, either of these players that I don't think have ever shown any passing ability, even at the level of Anton last season at Stuttgart. And one of Anton's criticisms is his passing ability, so it makes no sense to me. And by signing another 28-year-old defender, you're putting a lot of onus on the club's three very highly rated 17-year-old center backs that are still in the U19s. Elias Benkara, who the preseason diehard fans will remember because he looked very good in preseason, but his defensive abilities are still a little lacking. Those things develop later. Filippo Mane is not going to reach 500 minutes between the U23s this season. Tyler Meiser is a very highly rated German youth international. I believe he's also eligible to play for the United States, but is talented, so won't. And he's good, he's interesting, but he's had a couple injuries this season. And then the third is Luca Reggiani, who's split time between the U17s before his promotion this past winter to, I think, being full time with the U19 since then. But these guys are 17. They're not even dominating the U19 Bundesliga. And signing another 28-year-old is putting a lot of pressure on one of these guys to be very good at a very, very young age. So it makes no sense to me whatsoever. But before we head out, we have a quick Bundesliga fantasy update. and I sadly still sit in 6th. So we got to give our shout outs to actually talented players, and we're starting off with Pints of Bayer maintaining the top spot by just 100 points over Ryusunugi. Trailing just another 50 points behind them is Edward DC4. So we're in a real heat in these last 4 match weeks. Make sure you set your lineups. FC Chico a little bit down there, but still in touching distance with a very solid week for the top spot in 4th. And then German Plate is in 5th, just ahead of me by about 50 points, or 350 points, but that's neither here nor there. Is there anything you guys want to plug before we head out?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely check out, obviously us and all our socials, Dortmund Dispatch everywhere. Bundesliga Exchange, our second pod, is up and running. We have 2 episodes now. 3rd one's going to get recorded shortly. So we have that going on. And we have the new Bundesliga Dispatch account, which will be used as our central hub moving forward in terms of all the work that we all do. So if you want to catch some of Pedro or Joey or my writing on there, or you want to catch our shorts or anything like that we put up on all the other accounts, that's going to have all of that there. So it'll be your one-stop place for everything we basically do. But so obviously follow us there on Blue Sky as well. And as for myself, writing for GGFN, I do have a piece on Casper Yander coming out shortly. I think I said that last episode too. It was delayed, but it should be coming out this week. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, no, you guys don't need to follow me on my personal account, but follow us on BB Buzz, also Dortmund Dispatch, Bundesliga Exchange, all our podcasts and things related to us. We're doing a lot of work in the past few weeks. I've been a little bit absent, but hopefully I'm going to be back full strength and coming back to even more pods and talk Bundesliga and Borussia Dortmund with these guys.
Well, thank you for joining us, and have a good one.